Hey fam, Daniel here, and welcome back to Whole True Apologetics, where we seek answers to tough questions. Well, this week, these next few weeks, we'll be dealing with a hot topic. All right, the hot topic is abortion. This week specifically, we're going to be looking at what does the Bible say about when life begins and why is that important. And in the following week, we're going to be looking at what does science say about when life begins and why is that important. All right, so let's look at today, what does the Bible say? Well, first we got to look at what does the Bible say about humanity? Humanity. That's important. It's a foundation. We look back in Genesis 1 and 2. What does it say? It says that we are created in the image of God. We're created in the image of God. Why is that important? That's the foundation of humanity, that God created us in his image, meaning that each and every individual, no matter how old or how young, 90 years old, 90 minutes old, every single individual has value, dignity, and worth because they're created in the image of God. It doesn't matter where they're from, doesn't matter their age, doesn't matter any of that. What matters is that they are created in the image of God with value, dignity, and worth. That is the foundation we got to understand before we start digging into this in Scripture. That every single individual has value and dignity and worth because they're created in the image of God. And that should be fought and protected because every single person is important. All right? That's the first foundation. Next, we want to look at a little bit more detailed. What does Scripture say about when life begins? All right? When life begins. I'm going to read you a few verses here and kind of explain what I mean here. All right, let me start by reading Psalm 139, verse 13 through 16. Let me just stay with me here. I'm going to read a few verses, then explain it. This Psalm 139, verse 13 through 16 says this: "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." All right, that's in Psalm 139. Now we're going to look at Jeremiah 1. Jeremiah 1, 4 and 5 states this: "The word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." Now Genesis 25, verse 22 through 23 states this: "The children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are at war in your womb. 2 people from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger." He's talking about there's 2 children within her womb. Psalm 22, verse 10. "From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God." And then Luke 1, verse 44. "As soon as the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby in the womb leaped for joy." Now, what do all of these have in common, these passages I read to you? I just read to you 5 passages. What do these all have in common, and what are they all stating about when life begins? It talks about within the womb. Personhood, when humanity begins, is within the womb. There is nowhere, and I love this quote. This quote is by James Garlow. He states this. It says, "There's no Bible verse saying an embryo only becomes a living soul at the 2nd or 3rd trimester." Why is he stating that? Because it says all these passages show that a person has a living soul from the very moment of conception. It doesn't now receive a soul after 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 weeks of birth. From conception, they have a soul. From conception, they're a living being. From conception, they have value, dignity, and worth and should be protected. From the very moment of conception. There's no divide between the embryo and the person. Meaning, it's not an embryo for a while and then it becomes a person. It's a person from the moment of conception, according to Scripture. In fact, I love this passage in Exodus 21. God gives a command of defense or protection of a pregnant woman. It states this in Exodus 21, verse 22 through 23. It says, "If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the husband a woman's husband demands and the court allows. In other words, if there's a fight between a pregnant woman or something happens, a scuffle happens between a pregnant woman and another person, and she gets hit or whatever, but there's no injury to her or the child, then he owes a fine, whatever the court and the husband determine is correct. But, it goes on, but if there's a serious injury, you are to take a life for life. In other words, if this person hits this woman and she loses the child, then he's held responsible with his life. Why is that important to note? That life wasn't at 16 weeks. They were like, oh, how pregnant are you? 16 weeks? No. How far along? No, it's from the moment of conception. There's a life. There's a life with value, dignity, and worth. Now, we're given a charge as Christians with this information, with this understanding of Scripture. In Proverbs 24, verse 11 through 14, it says this: rescue those who are unjustly sentenced to death. Don't stand back and let them die. Don't try to disclaim responsibility by saying you didn't know about it. For God who knows all hearts knows yours, and He knows you knew, and He will reward everyone according to their deeds. So what does Scripture point to? Scripture points clearly that every single human life, every single human being has value, dignity, and worth. And that value, dignity, and worth doesn't begin at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 40 weeks. That value, dignity, and worth begins at conception, because it's at conception that life begins, according to Scripture. Well, I hope to see you guys next week, as we're going to be looking at what does science have to say about when life begins and why that matters. But so far, right now, what we see, Scripture says life begins from the moment of conception. Life begins in the womb. That is when it's personhood, individual. That is when they have value, dignity, and worth from the very moment of conception. And we should fight to defend that life, as well as all life, because every person is created in the image of God. Well, hope to see you guys next week. Just have a good week. Hey, if you found this video challenging or helpful, I encourage you like, subscribe, and share this video to anybody and everybody you know.